Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab. Now, let's begin. The fluorescent lights of the emergency room cast harsh shadows across David Rivers' face as he held his 4-year-old son, Tommy, against his chest. The boy's arm hung at an awkward angle, and David could feel the small body trembling with pain and fear. It was 2 a.m, and Marla sat beside them, her face pale and worried. "Daddy," Tommy whimpered, and David felt his heart clench. "It's okay, buddy. The doctors are going to fix you right up." A nurse called them back, and as they moved through the sterile corridors, David's mind replayed the events of the evening. Tommy had fallen off the monkey bars at the park just before sunset. A simple accident. Kids fall all the time. But something about Marla's father, Merle Vaughn, had been bothering David for weeks now, and this accident had crystallized a feeling he'd been trying to ignore. Merle had been at the park with him. He'd been the one watching Tommy on the playground while David and Marla sat on a bench nearby. When Tommy fell, Merle had been standing right there, yet he hadn't moved quickly enough to catch him. The old man's reflexes were slow, or at least that's what he'd claimed. But David had seen something else in Merle's eyes when they'd rushed over. Not concern, something calculating. 3 hours later, with Tommy's arm in a cast and loaded up with child-safe pain medication, they drove home through the empty streets of their suburban New Jersey neighborhood. Marla dozed in the passenger seat while Tommy slept in his car seat behind them. David's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. He'd met Marla 6 years ago at a mutual friend's wedding. She'd been the maid of honor, beautiful in a blue dress that matched her eyes, with dark hair that cascaded past her shoulders. She was funny, smart, and had a kindness about her that drew David in immediately. They'd married within a year, and Tommy had arrived 2 years after that. Life had been good, simple, happy. But Merle Vaughn had always been a shadow at the edge of that happiness. The old man was 72, a retired insurance adjuster who'd raised Marla alone after her mother died when she was 8. Marla spoke of her childhood with a strange mixture of nostalgia and vagueness that David had never quite understood. She'd paint pictures of happy memories, camping trips, fishing expeditions, weekend drives, but whenever David pressed for details, she'd become evasive, changing the subject with practiced ease. Merle himself was an imposing figure despite his age, tall and broad-shouldered, with a full head of silver hair and piercing gray eyes that seemed to see through people. He wore expensive suits even in retirement, carried himself with an unsettling confidence, and had a way of dominating any room he entered. He was charming when he wanted to be, with a booming laugh and a repertoire of stories that could entertain for hours. But David had always sensed something off about him, something predatory beneath the grandfather facade. The first few years of Tommy's life, Merle had been content with supervised visits, Sunday dinners, holiday gatherings, the occasional afternoon at their house. But 6 months ago, something had changed. Merle had started pushing for alone time with Tommy. He'd suggested taking the boy to the park, to the zoo, out for ice cream. Each time, David had found reasons to say no, to tag along, to ensure he or Marla was always present. Marla had started to notice. She'd asked David about it last month, her voice tinged with hurt and confusion. "Why don't you trust my father with Tommy?" "It's not about trust," David had lied. "I just want to be involved in my son's life." "You're being paranoid," she'd said, and the word had hung between them like an accusation. Now, parking in their driveway as the first hints of dawn colored the sky, David carried Tommy inside while Marla unlocked the door. The boy stirred as David laid him in bed, blue eyes opening briefly. "Love you, Dad," Tommy mumbled. "Love you too, champ. Get some sleep." David found Marla in the kitchen, making tea despite the hour. She looked exhausted, worried, and when she turned to him, he saw tears in her eyes. "This is my fault," she said. "I should have been watching him closer." "Hey, no." David crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. "Kids fall. It's what they do. He's going to be fine." She clung to him for a moment, then pulled back, wiping her eyes. "Dad feels terrible. He called while you were in the bathroom at the hospital. He wants to make it up to Tommy. Take him to that new indoor playground across town next weekend. The one with the foam pits and the trampolines where kids can't get hurt as easily." David felt ice crystallize in his chest. "No." David. I said no. Marla. Her face changed, hardening. This is getting ridiculous. He's Tommy's grandfather. He loves that boy. I'm sure he does. But Tommy just broke his arm. He doesn't need to be bouncing around a playground. He needs to rest. The doctor said he could resume normal activities in a few days. And it would just be a couple of hours. Dad really wants to bond with Tommy. She paused, her voice softening. He didn't have sons, David. Only me. Tommy is special to him. That's what I'm afraid of, David thought, but didn't say. Instead, he shook his head. Not alone. If he wants to take Tommy somewhere, we can all go together. Why? Marla's voice rose. Why won't you let them have grandfather-grandson time? My dad raised me just fine. He's not going to let anything happen to Tommy. If anything, he'll be extra careful now. David wanted to tell her about the feeling in his gut, the instinct that screamed at him every time Merle looked at Tommy. He wanted to explain that he'd been a cop for 2 years right out of college before switching careers to architecture. And in those 2 years, he'd learned to trust his instincts about people. But he couldn't articulate it in a way that wouldn't sound insane. I just don't think it's a good idea right now, David said finally. Marla stared at him for a long moment, then turned away. You're being unreasonable. And honestly, it's starting to hurt my feelings. That's my father, David. The man who raised me, who walked me down the aisle, who was there when Tommy was born. And you treat him like he's a stranger. That's not fair, isn't it? She grabbed her tea and headed toward the stairs. I'm going to bed. We can talk about this when you're being rational. David stood alone in the kitchen as dawn broke fully outside. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found the name he was looking for. Marcus Holt. Marcus had been David's partner during his brief stint with the Newark Police Department. Where David had left law enforcement for a steadier, safer career, Marcus had thrived, working his way up to detective before eventually leaving to start his own private investigation firm. They'd remained close friends over the years, meeting for beers once a month, attending each other's kids' birthday parties, maintaining the kind of bond that only shared experience can forge. David stared at Marcus's number for a long time. What would he even say? Hey, I think my father-in-law might be dangerous, but I have no evidence, just a feeling. Marcus would think he'd lost his mind. Hell, David was starting to wonder if Marla was right, if he was being paranoid. But then he thought about Merle's eyes at the park, that calculating look, and he thought about the way the old man always found reasons to touch Tommy. A hand on the shoulder that lingered too long, ruffling his hair, pulling him onto his lap during family dinners. Nothing overtly inappropriate, nothing David could point to and say that's wrong, but something that made his skin crawl nonetheless. He put the phone away. Not yet. He needed something concrete first, some proof that his instincts were right. Otherwise, he'd just be the paranoid husband driving a wedge between his wife and her father. The next few days passed in tense silence. Marla barely spoke to him except when necessary, her disappointment hanging between them like a wall. Tommy, oblivious to the adult tensions, adapted to his cast with the resilience of childhood, turning it into something to show off to his preschool classmates. David threw himself into work, spending long hours at his architecture firm designing a new community center for Montclair. But even as he drafted clean lines and calculated load-bearing walls, his mind kept drifting back to Merle Vaughn. On Thursday evening, Marla's phone rang during dinner. She glanced at the screen, then at David before answering. Hi, Dad. Her voice was bright, pointed. Yes, he's doing great. The cast doesn't even slow him down. A pause. This weekend? I'm not sure. Let me ask. She lowered the phone, her expression challenging. Dad wants to take Tommy to the Children's Museum on Saturday. They have a new dinosaur exhibit. Tommy's been begging to go. David's jaw tightened. All three of us can go. He wants to take Tommy alone, David. Just for a few hours. He thinks it would be fun for Tommy to have some special grandfather time. Then tell him no. Marla's face flushed. Unbelievable. She raised the phone back to her ear. Dad, can you hold on a second? She stood, walking into the living room, but David could hear every word. I'm sorry, Dad. David's being difficult. Yes, I know. I don't understand it either. David felt something inside him solidify. He'd been trying to be reasonable, trying to avoid conflict. But this was his son, his responsibility, to protect. And if Marla couldn't see the danger, then he'd have to act alone. After dinner, after Tommy was in bed, after another frigid conversation with Marla, where they spoke around the issue rather than about it, David went to his study and closed the door. He pulled out his phone and called Marcus. David, been a while, man. How's things? Marcus, I need your help with something. Something off the books. There was a pause. What kind of something? The kind where I need you to follow someone and tell me if I'm crazy. Another pause, longer this time. You're not crazy, David. I've known you 12 years. You got good instincts. What's going on? David told him everything. The feeling about Merle. The constant pressure for alone time with Tommy. The way Marla couldn't see it. His own inability to articulate exactly what was wrong. When he finished, Marcus was quiet for several seconds. Look, Marcus said finally, I'll be straight with you. What you're describing could be nothing. Overprotective grandfather who never had a son. Could be completely innocent. But I've worked enough cases to know that predators are patient. They groom families, not just kids. They build trust over years. They make you doubt yourself. He sighed. How old is Tommy now? 4. Almost 5. That's right in the target age range for most offenders. Marcus paused again. Okay, here's what we do. Next time the old man wants to take Tommy somewhere, you let him. What? No, Marcus. Let me finish. You let him, but you call me first. I'll follow them. Keep my distance, stay invisible, but watch where they go and what they do. If it's innocent, if they just go to the museum or the park or wherever, then you can relax. Maybe even apologize to your wife. But if something's off, if they go somewhere unexpected, if the old man does anything that raises flags, then we take it to the police. Deal. David's hands were shaking. The thought of letting Tommy out of his sight, into Merle's control, made him feel physically ill. But Marcus was right. He needed evidence. And if Merle was as dangerous as David's instincts suggested, it was only a matter of time before the old man made a mistake. Deal, David said. But Marcus? Stay close. Don't lose them. I won't. I promise. Saturday arrived with gray skies and a chill in the air. Marla had won the argument through sheer persistence and emotional blackmail. Tears, accusations of controlling behavior, threats about what this was doing to their marriage. David had finally, reluctantly, agreed that Merle could take Tommy to the Children's Museum. Just for 3 hours. Just this once. Marcus was parked 2 blocks away in an unmarked sedan, waiting for David's signal. Merle arrived at 10 o'clock sharp, dressed in khakis and a cardigan that made him look like everyone's ideal grandfather. Tommy ran to him excitedly, his cast covered in colorful drawings from his classmates. Grandpa, there's my boy. Merle scooped him up carefully, mindful of the injured arm. Ready for an adventure? Yeah. Marla stood beside David on the porch, her hand tight in his. She was nervous, David realized. Despite all her protests about his paranoia, some part of her was worried too. That knowledge should have reassured him. Instead, it made everything worse. Tommy, David called as Merle started toward his car. A dark blue sedan with tinted windows. Come here a second, buddy. Tommy ran back, and David knelt down to his level. You have fun today, okay? And if anything feels weird, or if Grandpa wants to go somewhere that's not the museum, you tell him you want to call Mommy or Daddy, understand? Tommy nodded seriously. Okay, Daddy. Good boy. David hugged him tight, perhaps a bit too tight. I love you. Love you too. As Tommy climbed into Merle's car, David caught the old man's eyes. There was something there, a flash of triumph, maybe, or amusement. Then Merle smiled, friendly and warm, and waved to them both before pulling away. David's phone buzzed immediately. Marcus on them. Stay by your phone. The next 3 hours were the longest of David's life. He tried to act normal, to do yard work, to make conversation with Marla. But his phone never left his hand, and his attention never fully focused on anything except waiting for Marcus to call. Marla noticed. See? Nothing's wrong. They're probably having a great time at the museum. David forced a smile and said nothing. At 12:30, his phone rang. Marcus. David's heart hammered as he answered, walking quickly into the house so Marla wouldn't hear. Marcus. David. Marcus's voice was tight, controlled. They didn't go to the museum. David's world tilted. Where did they go? They drove northwest, out of town, past Montclair, into some rural area I barely recognized. They're an old farmhouse right now. Looks abandoned. There's no one else around. What? David's voice came out strangled. What are they doing? I don't know. The car's parked behind the house. I hiked up to get a better view. There's a window I can see through. David, I'm going to record what I can see, okay? But you need to stay calm for your son. Marcus, if he's hurting Tommy, I'm on it. Give me 20 minutes. If anything urgent happens, I'm calling the police immediately. But right now I need to document whatever this is. Trust me. David wanted to scream. He wanted to jump in his car and drive there himself. But Marcus was right. They needed evidence. They needed documentation. Otherwise, it was just David's word against a 72-year-old grandfather, and he knew which way that would go. 27 minutes later, Marcus called back. His voice was different now. Shaken. David, I need you to meet me at my office. Right now. Don't tell Marla yet. Just come. Marcus, what did you see? Not over the phone. Just come. And David, bring a lawyer if you know one. We're going to need them. David made an excuse to Marla about a work emergency. A pipe burst at the community center construction site. She barely looked up from her book, and the guilt of lying to her was nothing compared to the terror coursing through his veins. Marcus's office was in a converted warehouse in Newark, 3rd floor, windows overlooking the Passaic River. When David burst through the door, Marcus was sitting at his desk, his face ashen, a glass of whiskey in his hand despite it being barely past noon. Show me, David demanded. Marcus wordlessly turned his laptop around. The video was grainy, shot through a dirty window, but clear enough. David watched as his father-in-law led Tommy into what looked like an old barn or storage room attached to the farmhouse. There were toys there, disturbing toys, and in the corner, a video camera on a tripod. David watched for 30 seconds before he had to turn away, his stomach heaving. When he could breathe again, he looked at Marcus. How long? 15 minutes of footage. I stopped when they came back outside. Tommy looked okay. Confused, maybe upset, but physically okay. Merle drove him straight to your house after that. They pulled up about 5 minutes ago. David's hands curled into fists. Every instinct screamed at him to drive home, to rip Merle Vaughn apart with his bare hands. But Marcus grabbed his arm. Don't. Not yet. We do this right, or he walks. You understand me? We do this right. What do we do? Marcus picked up his phone. We call the FBI. The FBI? This isn't just assault, David. That camera set up, those props, the location. This is organized. This is a production operation, which means there's probably a network. And if there's a network, there's distribution. This is federal. 2 hours later, David sat in a conference room at the FBI's Newark field office with Marcus beside him. 3 agents had reviewed Marcus's footage. Special Agent Carolina Ball, who specialized in crimes against children. Special Agent Guy Sheridan, a veteran investigator with 20 years of experience. And Special Agent Bradley Lynch, the technical specialist. Agent Ball had stepped outside halfway through the video. When she came back, her eyes were red. Agent Sheridan had maintained his composure better, but his jaw was clenched so tight David thought he might crack teeth. Only Agent Lynch had watched the entire thing with professional detachment, but even he needed a moment afterward, stepping into the hallway where David heard him taking deep breaths. Now, they sat across from David and Marcus, and Agent Ball spoke first. Mr. Rivers, I want to assure you that we take this extremely seriously. What you've documented here is evidence of child sexual abuse and potentially a much larger operation. We'll be executing a search warrant on that farmhouse within hours. We'll also need to interview your son, though we'll do so with a specialist trained in child forensics and in a way that minimizes trauma. What about Merle? David's voice was hoarse. What about my father-in-law? We'll be bringing him in for questioning. And depending on what we find at the farmhouse and on his electronic devices, we'll be pursuing charges. Agent Sheridan leaned forward. But Mr. Rivers, I need to be honest with you. Cases like this are complicated. Defense attorneys will claim the video is ambiguous, that your friend's surveillance was illegal, that you have ulterior motives. We need to build an airtight case, which takes time. How much time? Weeks, maybe months. But in the interim, we can get an emergency restraining order. Merle Vaughn won't be allowed anywhere near your son. David thought about Marla, about how he'd have to tell her, about how their marriage might not survive this. But then he thought about Tommy, about what he'd just seen in that video, about what might have happened if he hadn't trusted his instincts. Do whatever you need to do, he said. I want him in prison. Forever. Agent Ball nodded. We'll do everything we can to make that happen. David drove home in a daze. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors too beautiful for such a terrible day. When he pulled into his driveway, he saw Merle's car was gone, but Marla's was there, and through the window he could see her in the kitchen, probably making dinner. Tommy met him at the door. Daddy, I missed you. David dropped to his knees and pulled his son into his arms, holding him so tight Tommy squeaked in protest. Miss you too, buddy. So much. The museum was closed, Tommy said, his voice small. Grandpa took me somewhere else instead. It was weird, Daddy. I didn't like it. David felt tears burning his eyes. I know, champ. I know. But you don't have to go anywhere with Grandpa anymore, okay? Not for a while. Marla appeared in the doorway, her expression confused. David, what's wrong? You're home early, and you look... She stopped, really seeing his face. What happened? David stood, picking Tommy up. Marla, I need you to take Tommy upstairs and put on a movie. Something he loves. Then we need to talk. David, you're scaring me. Please, just do it. 10 minutes later, with Tommy safely ensconced in his room watching Toy Story, David and Marla sat at the kitchen table. He told her everything. The instincts he'd had, the call to Marcus, the surveillance, the farmhouse, the video, the FBI. Marla's face went through a dozen emotions: disbelief, anger, denial, horror, grief. When David finished, she sat frozen, her hands clasped so tight her knuckles were white. No, she whispered finally. No, you're wrong. My father wouldn't, he couldn't. Marla, show me. Her eyes were wild. Show me the video. I don't have it. The FBI has it, and you don't want to see it. Trust me. Trust you. Her voice rose. You've been saying these things about my father, poisoning my mind, and now you want me to just believe. David's phone rang. Agent Ball, Mr. Rivers, we've executed the warrant on the farmhouse. We found extensive evidence. Multiple hard drives, cloud storage accounts, correspondence with other offenders. This is bigger than we initially thought. She paused. We're bringing Merle Vaughn into custody right now. Where is he? I don't know. He's not here. We're at his house. He's not here either. Does he have other properties? Other places he might go? David looked at Marla. Does your father have any other properties? Anywhere he might be? She stared at him, her face crumbling. There's a cabin. In the Poconos. By Lake Wallenpaupack. He took me there as a kid. David relayed the information to Agent Ball, who promised to send units there immediately. When he hung up, Marla was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. I didn't know, she whispered. All those trips we took, all that time we spent together, I thought he loved me. I thought those were happy memories. David moved to hold her, but she flinched away. You knew, she said, her voice breaking. You knew, and I didn't believe you. I called you paranoid. I pushed for him to spend time with Tommy. Oh God, David. What if you hadn't? She couldn't finish, her body shaking with sobs. This time when David reached for her, she let him. They held each other in the kitchen as darkness fell outside. Both of them crying, both of them trying to process a horror that had been hiding in plain sight. The next 72 hours were a blur. The FBI raided the Poconos cabin and found Merle Vaughn there, along with enough evidence to charge him with dozens of counts of child sexual abuse, production and distribution of child pornography, and conspiracy. They found years' worth of material, victims going back decades, a network of offenders spanning 3 states. Tommy was interviewed by Dr. Erica McKinney, a child psychologist specializing in abuse cases. She was gentle and patient, using dolls and drawings to help Tommy express what had happened. David watched through a one-way mirror, Marcus beside him, both men struggling to maintain composure. When it was over, Dr. McKinney told them that Tommy had been touched inappropriately and photographed, but that the abuse had not progressed beyond that. You caught it early, she said. The psychological impact is still significant, but with therapy and support, Tommy can recover. You saved him from something much worse. Small comfort, David thought, but comfort nonetheless. Merle Vaughn was denied bail. The evidence against him was overwhelming, the flight risk too high. His attorney, a slick defense lawyer named Martin Torres, tried to get the surveillance footage excluded, arguing that Marcus's actions constituted illegal stalking. But Agent Sheridan testified that the footage had only been used to establish probable cause for the warrant, and everything truly damning had been found during the legal search. The media picked up the story. Retired insurance adjuster arrested in multi-state child abuse ring. David kept Tommy away from news coverage, but he couldn't protect Marla from the headlines. She stopped going to work, stopped answering calls from friends. Her father's face was everywhere, and with it, questions about what she'd known, whether she'd been complicit. David assured her constantly that no one thought that she was a victim too. But he could see the guilt eating at her, the way she second-guessed every childhood memory, wondering what had been real and what had been grooming. 2 weeks after Merle's arrest, Marcus called David with news. They've identified 11 victims so far. 3 local, 8 from other states. The youngest was 3. The oldest was 7. David felt sick. Are they all getting help? Yeah. The FBI has connected their families with resources, therapists, support groups. And David? The prosecutor wants to meet with you. They're building their case, and your testimony is going to be crucial. The prosecutor was a woman named Leah Bass, mid-40s with iron gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. She met with David in her office, surrounded by file boxes that represented years of Merle Vaughn's crimes. Mr. Rivers, I want to thank you for trusting your instincts. If you hadn't acted when you did, we might never have caught him. These predators are expert at hiding in plain sight. I just wish I'd acted sooner, David said. You acted when you had cause to act. That's all anyone can do. She pulled out a folder. I want to walk you through the trial timeline and what your role will be. Merle Vaughn is going to prison for the rest of his life. But I need you to help me make sure that happens. Over the next hour, Leah outlined the prosecution strategy. They had physical evidence, digital evidence, victim testimony, and expert witnesses. But David's testimony would be crucial in establishing Merle's pattern of manipulation, his grooming of the entire family, his careful cultivation of trust and access. The defense is going to try to paint you as a paranoid, controlling husband who manufactured this entire scenario because you didn't like your father-in-law, Leah warned. They'll say you coached your son, that you corrupted the investigation, that you're seeking attention or revenge. You need to be prepared for that. David nodded. I can handle it. I believe you can. Leah smiled grimly. Because you're not some vigilante acting on hunches. You're a father who protected his son. And when it comes to cases like this, that distinction matters to juries. The preliminary hearings began in November. David sat in the courtroom with Marla, watching as Merle Vaughn was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit, his silver hair unkempt, his face haggard. The old man's eyes found David's across the room, and for a moment, David saw pure hatred there. Not remorse, not shame, just rage of being caught. David stared back, unflinching. He'd been afraid of this man for months, had doubted himself, had worried he was wrong. But he hadn't been wrong, and now Merle Vaughn would pay for every child he'd hurt, every family he'd destroyed, every life he'd warped. Martin Torres, the defense attorney, tried every trick in the book. He filed motions to exclude evidence, to dismiss charges, to separate the counts into multiple trials. He argued that the farmhouse searches had been improperly executed, that the video Marcus had taken violated wiretapping laws, that David had poisoned his son against his grandfather. Judge Roland McLean, a stern man with 30 years on the bench, denied motion after motion. Mr. Torres, I've seen the evidence in this case. Your client is not going to walk on technicalities. Save your energy for trial. As winter descended and the trial date was set for February, David focused on Tommy's therapy. Dr. McKinney recommended twice-weekly sessions initially, tapering down as Tommy processed what had happened. The boy was resilient but confused, asking questions that broke David's heart. Why did Grandpa do bad things? Because some people are sick in their minds, buddy, and they hurt others. But that's not your fault. Nothing about this is your fault. Is Grandpa going to jail? Yes. For a very long time. Good. Tommy's voice was fierce, and David saw a glimpse of the man his son would become. Strong, sure of himself, unwilling to be a victim. Marla's healing was slower. She started therapy too, working through the revelation that her entire childhood had been a lie. Her father hadn't been the loving, single parent she believed. He'd been a predator who'd groomed her as thoroughly as any of his other victims, teaching her to dismiss her own instincts, to see his possessiveness as love, to defend him against any criticism. I feel like I don't know who I am, she told David one night as they lay in bed, unable to sleep. Everything I thought I knew about my past is tainted. Every memory is suspect. You know who you are, David said, taking her hand. You're a good mother, a good person, and you didn't know because he didn't want you to know. That's on him, not you. But what if I pass something on to Tommy? What if I'm damaged in ways I don't even understand? Then we work through it together. All of us. As a family. She turned to look at him in the darkness. You saved our son, David. You saved him because you trusted yourself even when I made you doubt. I'm so sorry I didn't believe you. You were his victim too, Marla. You were conditioned not to see it. That's how these people operate. They held each other. Two people trying to rebuild a life that had been shattered by evil hiding behind a grandfather's smile. The trial began on February 10th. The courtroom was packed. Families of other victims, media, law enforcement officials who'd worked the case. David sat in the front row beside Marla, with Marcus just behind them for support. Leah Bass's opening statement was powerful and damning. She walked the jury through the evidence methodically, showing them the web of deception Merle Vaughn had spun over decades. She introduced them to the victims, to the families, to the mountain of digital evidence that proved beyond any doubt what kind of monster had been masquerading as a grandfather. Martin Torres's opening was smoother, more manipulative. He painted Merle as a lonely old man, a widower who tried his best to raise a daughter alone and who loved his grandson deeply. He suggested that David Rivers was a paranoid individual with control issues, that the innocent photos and videos had been taken out of context, that this was all a tragic misunderstanding. David felt his blood boil, listening to the lies, but he kept his expression neutral. This was what Leah had prepared him for. The prosecution's case took 3 weeks. Victim after victim testified, their voices small but strong, telling stories of abuse that had been hidden for years. FBI agents detailed the searches, the evidence collected, the networks uncovered. Digital forensic experts explained the contents of hard drives that contained horrors David could barely conceptualize. And then it was David's turn. Leah walked him through his testimony carefully. He explained his background in law enforcement, his instincts about Merle, the increasing pressure for alone time with Tommy. He described the decision to have Marcus follow them, the discovery of the farmhouse, the immediate call to the FBI. Mr. Rivers, Leah asked, at any point, did you consider confronting your father-in-law directly instead of involving law enforcement? Yes, David said honestly. Part of me wanted to, but I knew that if I acted on emotion instead of evidence, then he might get away with it. And I couldn't let that happen. Not when other children might be at risk. So you prioritize justice over vengeance? I prioritize protecting children. All of them. Not just my son. When Martin Torres cross-examined him, the attorney was aggressive. Mr. Rivers, isn't it true that you never liked your father-in-law? That's not accurate. I was uncomfortable around him, yes. But I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt for years. You tried to prevent him from spending time with his own grandson, didn't you? I tried to ensure my son was safe, yes. Safe from what, Mr. Rivers? What did you actually witness that made you think Merle Vaughn was dangerous? Nothing overt. But as a former police officer, I was trained to recognize patterns of behavior associated with predators. And Merle Vaughn exhibited those patterns. So you admit you had no concrete evidence? I had strong suspicion based on professional experience, which is why I documented everything properly and involved the appropriate authorities rather than acting on my own. Torres tried several more angles, but David remained calm, factual, and unshakable. He'd been coached well by Leah, but more than that, he knew he was right. He knew what he'd seen in that video, what the FBI had found, what the other families had suffered. No amount of legal maneuvering could change those facts. After David testified, Dr. McKinney took the stand to explain Tommy's interviews and the psychological indicators of abuse. Then came the technical testimony about the computer forensics, the metadata, the timestamps that proved Merle's guilt beyond any reasonable doubt. Torres tried to create doubt anyway. He brought in his own experts who questioned the reliability of digital evidence, who suggested that Merle's computers might have been hacked, that someone else might have planted the files. But his arguments sounded desperate even to David's untrained legal ear. The defense's case was weak. Torres called character witnesses who'd known Merle in his professional life, who testified about what a good man he'd seemed. But none of them could refute the physical evidence, the victim testimony, the meticulous FBI documentation. Merle himself didn't testify. Torres advised against it, probably knowing that putting his client on the stand would be disastrous. Instead, they rested their case and prepared for closing arguments. Leah's closing statement was a masterpiece. She reminded the jury of every piece of evidence, every victim, every lie Merle had told. She pointed to David's testimony as proof that the system had worked. A father had trusted his instincts, had documented his concerns properly, had brought in law enforcement instead of taking matters into his own hands. Members of a jury, she said, Merle Vaughn spent decades perfecting his predation. He targeted vulnerable families, groomed entire communities, and cultivated an image as the perfect grandfather. But David Rivers saw through that image. He saw the truth. And because he had the courage to act on what he saw, 11 known victims, and likely many more we haven't identified yet, can begin to heal. Don't let Merle Vaughn escape justice because he was clever. Don't let him walk free because he's old or because his crimes are difficult to contemplate. Hold him accountable for every child he hurt, every family he destroyed, every life he irrevocably changed. Torres's closing was predictably desperate. He tried to portray Merle as a victim of overzealous prosecution, David as a controlling manipulator, the evidence as circumstantial. But David could see the jury wasn't buying it. They'd heard too much, seen too much evidence, listened to too many victims. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous on all counts, guilty. Merle Vaughn's face remained impassive as the verdicts were read, but David saw his hands shake slightly. Beside him, Marlo wept silently. Tears of relief, of grief, of a complicated mixture of emotions David couldn't fully understand but tried to support. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Judge McClain looked at Merle Vaughn with undisguised contempt. Mr. Vaughn, in my 30 years on this bench, I have rarely encountered a defendant whose crimes have been so calculated, so extensive, and so devastating. You abused positions of trust. You targeted the most vulnerable members of society. You showed no remorse and no mercy. The law provides a maximum sentence for each count, and it is my intention to ensure you never walk free again. He sentenced Merle to 40 years on the federal charges, to be served consecutively with state sentences that would be forthcoming. At 72, it was effectively a life sentence. Merle Vaughn would die in prison. As the marshals led him away, Merle's eyes found David's one last time. The old man's expression was unreadable, but David met his gaze steadily. He'd won. Justice had been served. His son was safe. Outside the courthouse, a crowd of supporters had gathered. Families of other victims, advocates for child safety, reporters. David gave a brief statement. I want to thank the FBI, the prosecutors, and everyone who worked to bring Merle Vaughn to justice. But most importantly, I want to say this to other parents. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, investigate. Document. Involve professionals. Don't let anyone, not family, not friends, not your own doubts, convince you to ignore warning signs when it comes to your children's safety. You might save a life. That evening, David sat with Tommy in the boys' bedroom. The cast had come off weeks ago, and Tommy was back to his energetic, happy self, though he still had nightmares sometimes. Dr. McKinney said they might continue for years, but that with support and therapy, Tommy would be okay. Daddy, is Grandpa really gone forever? Yes, buddy. He's never going to hurt anyone again. Tommy nodded seriously. Good. I was scared of him, but I didn't want to say because Mommy loved him. David's heart ached. You can always tell us if you're scared of someone, Tommy. Always. We'll believe you. I know that now. Tommy paused. Daddy? Are you a hero? David smiled sadly. No, champ. I'm just a dad who loves his son very much. Dr. McKinney says you saved me. Maybe. But you save yourself too by being brave enough to tell us what happened. That took courage. Tommy hugged him tight. I love you, Daddy. Love you too, Tommy. More than anything in the world. Downstairs, David found Marla in the kitchen, staring out the window at the backyard where spring was beginning to emerge. She'd been accepted into a support group for family members of abuse victims and was slowly rebuilding her sense of self. It's over, she said as David approached. The trial is. The healing isn't. That takes longer. She turned to him. I've been thinking about what Dr. McKinney said, about how Tommy might struggle with this for years, about how I need to process my own childhood trauma. We'll get through it together. I know. But David, she took his hand. Thank you for being strong when I couldn't be. Thank you for protecting our son, even when I fought you. Thank you for being the kind of man who does the right thing no matter how hard it is. David pulled her close. They stood together as darkness fell, two parents who'd faced evil and survived, ready to rebuild their lives one day at a time. 6 months later, David received a letter from Agent Carolina Ball. She'd been promoted and was now heading a task force focused on child exploitation cases. But she'd written to tell him that the investigation into Merle's network had resulted in 17 additional arrests across 4 states. Dozens more children had been identified and were receiving help. Your willingness to act on your instincts started something bigger than just one arrest, she wrote. You gave those other children families a chance at justice and healing. That's a legacy to be proud of. David kept the letter in his desk drawer, pulling it out occasionally when doubt crept in during the dark hours of the night. Because even with Merle behind bars, even with justice served, David still struggled with what-ifs. What if he'd waited too long? What if he'd been wrong? What if he hadn't trusted himself? But then he'd look at Tommy, now in kindergarten, thriving despite everything he'd been through. He'd see Marla, stronger every day, reclaiming her narrative and building a new relationship with herself. He'd remember that 17 predators were now in prison because he'd acted, and he'd know that he'd done the right thing. Not the easy thing, not the comfortable thing, but the right thing. Marcus called one evening in early autumn. Hey, I'm having a barbecue this weekend. Thought you guys might want to come. Tommy and my kids can play, and we can pretend life is normal for a few hours. That sounds perfect, David said. At the barbecue, surrounded by friends and laughter and the normalcy of suburban life, David watched Tommy chase Marcus's daughter around the yard, both children shrieking with joy. Marla sat beside him, her hand in his, a real smile on her face for the first time in months. We're going to be okay, she said. Yes, David agreed. We are. Because that's what survivors do. They heal. They rebuild. They move forward. And they never, ever forget the importance of trusting their instincts, of protecting the vulnerable, of standing up against evil even when it wears a friendly face. David Rivers had been called paranoid, controlling, unreasonable. But in the end, he'd been right, and his son was safe. That was all that mattered. As the sun set over the backyard and Tommy's laughter echoed through the cooling evening air, David felt something he hadn't felt in over a year. Peace. Not perfect peace. The scars would always be there. But the peace of knowing he'd done everything he could to protect what mattered most. And sometimes, that's all a father can ask for. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome to Infidelity Tales Lab. We're grateful you've chosen to join us today. Tell us, which part of the world are you watching from? Big city? Small town? Country? We'd love to know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Blueprint of Deception. Travis Holloway stood at the edge of his latest architectural masterpiece, the Riverside Heights complex, a testament to his journey from the backstreets of Detroit to becoming one of the most sought-after architects in Chicago. The evening sun glinted off the glass facade he had designed to capture light at this exact hour. At 45, Travis had built his reputation through grit and raw talent, not family connections or inherited wealth. His phone buzzed. Veronica's message was terse. Won't be home for dinner. Board meeting ran late. Don't wait up. Third time this week. Travis pocketed his phone without replying. Their 15-year marriage had become a hollow structure, impressive from the outside, but crumbling within. He remembered when they'd met, back when he was still fighting for recognition, and she was the dazzling socialite who'd somehow seen something in him beyond his working-class roots. Mr. Holloway, the investors are waiting. His assistant, Paige, gestured toward the conference room. Give me a minute, Travis said, straightening his tie. These moments before meetings were when he missed Vincent the most. His oldest friend was traveling through Europe on a sabbatical, unreachable for another week. Vincent would have offered some profane but accurate assessment of the situation, making Travis laugh despite himself. After securing the Riverside Heights deal, Travis drove home to their sprawling lakeside house, one he designed himself as a gift to Veronica for their 10th anniversary. The house he rarely felt welcome in anymore. He found Liam, his 17-year-old son, sprawled on the living room couch, expensive headphones clamped over his ears. Where's your sister? Travis asked after Liam reluctantly removed one earpiece. Out with Mom. Some charity thing. Liam barely looked up from his phone. Travis nodded, recognizing another lie. The Chicago Children's Fund event wasn't until next week. He was on the donor list. He walked to his study, closed the door, and pulled out the small leather notebook he'd started keeping 3 months ago. In it, he meticulously documented every inconsistency, every lie, building a case like he would structure a building, layer by layer. His phone rang. The caller ID showed Naomi Sinclair, Veronica's best friend since college. Travis, Naomi said, her voice hushed. We need to talk. Not over the phone. I'm listening, Travis replied, already knowing what she might say. Tomorrow. Lakefront coffee. Noon. She hung up without waiting for confirmation. Travis stared at the phone. Naomi had been acting strangely at their last dinner party, watching Veronica with a mixture of disappointment and anger. He suspected Naomi's conscience was finally getting the better of her loyalty to Veronica. Later that night, Travis heard Veronica's key in the lock just after midnight. He remained in his study, pretending to work while monitoring the security system on his tablet, another recent installation Veronica didn't know recorded to a private server. She stumbled slightly entering their bedroom, the scent of unfamiliar cologne trailing her. Travis watched on the tablet as she showered immediately, then buried her clothes in the hamper beneath others. Gathering evidence won't make it hurt less, he whispered to himself. But he wasn't building a case to heal his pain. He was constructing the foundation for something else entirely. The next day, Naomi confirmed what Travis had already pieced together. Veronica was having an affair with Theodore Buck Sullivan, a real estate developer who had recently commissioned Travis for a downtown project. He's dangerous, Travis, Naomi warned over coffee. Not just the usual rich asshole. People who cross Buck tend to face consequences. How long? Travis asked, his voice perfectly controlled. 8 months. Maybe longer. Naomi couldn't meet his eyes. She's been poisoning the kids against you too, telling them you're cold, distant, only care about your work. Travis nodded, adding this information to his mental blueprint. Why tell me now? Naomi finally looked up. Because last week Buck was laughing about how he's going to ruin you professionally after he gets what he wants. And Veronica was laughing with him. As Travis drove back to his office, he made a call to an old contact, someone who owed him from years ago when Travis had kept quiet about certain structural irregularities in exchange for future favors. It was time to collect. Chapter 2. Structural Weakness. 3 weeks passed while Travis executed the first phase of his plan. He hired a private investigator named Damon Walsh, a former intelligence operative who specialized in difficult cases and operated entirely off the books. You're not the first husband I've worked for, Damon said as they met in a vacant office Travis owned through a shell company. But most want the evidence for divorce court. I need more than evidence, Travis replied. I need to understand their patterns, their plans. Everything. Damon's findings exceeded expectations. Buck Sullivan wasn't just having an affair with Veronica. They were planning a future together that required Travis's complete professional destruction. Sullivan had systematically courted Travis's clients, beginning with subtle rumors about delays and budget overruns in Travis's projects. More disturbing were the conversations Damon recorded between Veronica and their children. Travis listened stoically as his wife described him as emotionally absent, obsessed with proving himself, and embarrassing with his working-class habits to their increasingly receptive children. "Dad doesn't get how things work in our world," Veronica had told 14-year-old Tara. "Buck understands appearances matter." Only once did Travis betray emotion, when Damon played a recording of Veronica and Buck in bed together, laughing about the Riverside project. "He has no idea I've already convinced Westfield to drop him after the preliminary designs," Buck boasted. "He'll design it. I'll take the credit with my modifications, and by next year, he'll be begging for commercial renovations work." Travis closed the laptop. "That's enough. There's more," Damon said. "They're planning to announce their relationship at the Sullivan Foundation Gala next month. She's already secured a post-divorce position on their board." Travis nodded. "What about Sullivan himself?" "I need leverage." "That's where it gets interesting." Damon slid across a folder. "Sullivan isn't just corrupt, he's careful. But even careful men make mistakes." Travis opened the folder to find documents detailing how Sullivan had been systematically stealing designs from architects, paying city inspectors to create problems for competing developers, and maintaining dangerous building practices to maximize profits. Most troublingly, he had connections to several local politicians who ensured his projects received preferential treatment. "He's untouchable through normal channels," Damon warned. The last architect who threatened to expose him was found with child pornography on his computer. Case later dismissed, but his career was over. Sullivan plays to win. "So do I," Travis replied, closing the folder. "But I need someone else. Someone Sullivan and Veronica would never connect to me." Damon hesitated. "I might know someone. A woman named Meredith Whitman, former federal prosecutor who now runs a private equity firm specializing in real estate. Has a personal vendetta against Sullivan after he ruined her brother's construction company." "Make the introduction," Travis said, discreetly. That evening, Travis joined his family for dinner for the first time in weeks. He watched as Veronica performed the role of devoted wife, asking about his day with practiced interest while Liam and Tara barely acknowledged him. "I've been thinking," Travis said casually, "we should host Thanksgiving here this year. Invite the extended family." Veronica nearly dropped her fork. "Your side too?" "Travis, your Uncle Dale spent last Christmas talking about his time in prison." "Family is family," Travis insisted with unusual firmness. "Besides, I've been absent too long. Time to reconnect." The children exchanged glances, but Travis continued eating as if nothing were amiss. Let Veronica think she had broken him into seeking family connection. Every architect knew the importance of misdirection. Later that week, Travis met Meredith Whitman at her downtown office. She was striking in her early 50s, with steel gray hair and eyes that assessed him. "Damon explained your situation," she said without preamble. "Why should I help you?" "Because you want Sullivan ruined, and I can deliver him in a way that ensures he never recovers," Travis replied. "I don't want money or revenge. I want justice, complete and irreversible." Meredith's expression didn't change. "Sullivan destroyed my brother's reputation, his company, and ultimately his will to live. I've spent 5 years looking for a weakness and found nothing usable." "You didn't have access to his inner circle." Travis placed a small drive on her desk. "I designed his home, his office, and now he's sleeping with my wife. There's no better access than that." As Meredith reviewed the files, her composure finally cracked. "This is comprehensive. I'm thorough," Travis said simply. "But information alone isn't enough. I need your connections and resources." "What exactly are you proposing?" Travis leaned forward. "A complete deconstruction. Professional, personal, financial. I've already begun laying the groundwork. By the time Travis left Meredith's office 3 hours later, they had formed an alliance built on shared purpose. Phase 2 could begin, and with it, the careful dismantling of the life Buck Sullivan had built. Chapter 3: The Breaking Point. Thanksgiving arrived with bitter cold and early snow. Travis had spent the preceding weeks implementing his plan's initial stages. He maintained his normal routine, giving Veronica and the children no reason to suspect he knew anything. Meanwhile, Meredith had begun redirecting investments away from properties connected to Sullivan's developments, creating subtle market pressure that would only be noticeable to those paying close attention. The Holloway home buzzed with preparation. Travis had insisted on hosting both families, his working-class relatives from Detroit and Veronica's upper-crust connection from Lake Forest. The tension was palpable as caterers arranged everything to Veronica's exacting standards. "Your Uncle Morris just pulled up," Veronica hissed, watching from the window. "He's wearing a flannel shirt." "To Thanksgiving dinner." Travis suppressed a smile. "He's comfortable with who he is." "Well, I'm not comfortable with my mother seeing this," Veronica snapped. "The Blackwells have hosted senators. Last year we had dinner with the governor. Yet here you are with the boy from Corktown," Travis remarked. "Funny how life works out." Veronica's face hardened. "Yes, funny." The dinner began cordially enough. Travis had seated himself at the head of the table, a position he rarely claimed in recent years. He watched as Veronica charmed his relatives while simultaneously exchanging knowing glances with her own family. The silent communication clear. These people are beneath us. Halfway through the main course, Travis excused himself to take a call from the office and slipped into his study. 3 minutes later, right on schedule, the doorbell rang. Travis heard Veronica answering, then a moment of confused silence. "Travis," Veronica called, her voice tight. "There's someone here for you." He returned to find Buck Sullivan standing in his foyer, holding a bottle of expensive bourbon and wearing an expression of calculated surprise. "Travis, didn't expect to find you home on a holiday," Buck said with practiced joviality. "Thought you'd be working on the Madison Avenue revisions." Travis extended his hand with a smile. "Buck, what a surprise. We're just having Thanksgiving dinner." "I should go," Buck began, but Travis interrupted. "Nonsense. Join us. There's plenty of food, and we should discuss those revisions you mentioned." The blood drained from Veronica's face as Travis led Buck to the dining room, introducing him to everyone as a client and close friend of Veronica's from the foundation. "Mr. Sullivan has taken a special interest in our family lately," Travis added, watching his wife's knuckles whiten around her wine glass. The meal continued with excruciating tensity. Travis noted how Liam practically fawned over Buck, asking about his car collection and summer home in the Hamptons. Tara, more reserved, watched the adults with calculating eyes that reminded Travis of himself at that age, missing nothing. When dessert was served, Travis stood to make a toast, something so out of character that the table fell silent in surprise. "Family is everything," he began, raising his glass. "Blood relatives and chosen family alike. The foundations we build determine what structures can stand upon them." He looked directly at Veronica. "Some structures look solid, but are compromised from within. It takes an expert to recognize the signs before collapse." Buck shifted uncomfortably while Travis's Uncle Dale, the ex-con, eyed him with sudden interest. "To foundations," Travis concluded, "may we all be aware of what we're really standing on." The atmosphere remained strained until Veronica's mother suggested they move to the living room for coffee. As the group migrated, Veronica pulled Travis aside. "What the hell are you doing?" she hissed. "Hosting Thanksgiving," Travis replied mildly. "Isn't that what you wanted? A husband who participates in family gatherings." Buck showing up was completely unexpected. "Was it?" Travis asked, his voice finally revealing a hint of steel. "Interesting coincidence." Before she could respond, Veronica's father called her over to resolve some dispute about family photos. Travis retreated to help clear dishes, finding Tara already in the kitchen, pensively scraping plates. "You know, don't you?" she asked without looking up. Travis paused. "Know what?" About Mom and Mr. Sullivan. Tara finally met his eyes. She thinks I don't notice, but I do. Liam's too busy trying to impress everyone to see it. Travis studied his daughter, reassessing her. When did you figure it out? 3 months ago. She was texting him while helping me with homework. I saw the messages when she went to answer the door. Tara's voice was flat. She told me you're distant because you're ashamed of where you came from. But that's not true, is it? No, Travis said simply. I've never been ashamed of my origins. They taught me to recognize authentic people from frauds. He touched her shoulder briefly. Thank you for paying attention. The moment was interrupted by Veronica, who entered with a brittle smile. Travis, your relatives are asking for you. Something about showing them your office. As Travis left, he heard Veronica instructing the catering staff to serve Buck a special plate in the living room. He guided his Detroit relatives through a tour of the home he had designed, noting with irony how much more they appreciated its architectural details than Veronica's family ever had. When they returned to the main gathering, Travis found the seating arrangement had been subtly altered. Buck was now holding court near the fireplace, Veronica attentive at his side, while a place had been conspicuously cleared in the far corner. Travis, Veronica called with false brightness. We've set up a place for you in the garage with the leftovers. Your Uncle Dale was telling us about his interest in automotive repair, so we thought you could both be more comfortable out there. A sickening silence fell over the room. Even Veronica's mother looked embarrassed. The garage. Travis's cousin Bethany asked. What the hell kind of way is that to treat your husband? It's fine, Travis said calmly. Dale and I have a lot to catch up on. Dale, reading something in Travis's expression, stood up and clapped him on the shoulder. Lead the way, nephew. Been wanting to pick your brain anyway. As they headed toward the garage, Tara suddenly stood. I'm coming too. Tara, sit down, Veronica ordered. There's no need to. I want to hear Uncle Dale's stories, Tara insisted. To everyone's surprise, Liam stood as well. Yeah, me too. Travis felt a surge of unexpected emotion as his children followed him to the garage, where the catering staff had indeed set up a makeshift dining area among the tools and vehicles. At Thanksgiving, they made me eat in the garage, Travis said conversationally to Dale as they sat down. He's used to scraps, my wife said. Dale's weathered face darkened. Wanting to have a word with her? Prison taught me some persuasive techniques. No need, Travis replied, watching his children's reactions. This is actually perfect. They sat in awkward silence for a few minutes, the children picking at the leftover turkey and stuffing. Dad, Liam began, then stopped, seeming to struggle with what to say. It's okay, Travis said. I know about your mother and Buck. Tara glanced at her brother. I told you he'd figure it out. How long have you known? Liam asked. Long enough, Travis replied, and long enough to do something about it. Before he could elaborate, they heard the crunch of tires on the snow-covered driveway. Through the garage windows, they watched as a sleek black limousine pulled up to the front of the house. The driver emerged first, opening the rear door. A woman stepped out, tall, elegant, instantly commanding in a tailored charcoal suit despite the bitter cold. She surveyed the house for a moment before walking purposefully to the front door. Who's that? Liam asked. Travis checked his watch. Right on time. He stood and straightened his jacket. That's Meredith Whitman, and she's looking for the owner of this house. As they moved back toward the main house, they could hear the doorbell, followed by Veronica answering. From the hallway, Travis watched as Meredith introduced herself. I'm looking for the owner of this house, she stated clearly, her voice carrying through the suddenly quiet gathering. Veronica's face tightened with territorial pride. I'm Veronica Holloway. This is my home. Meredith's gaze swept over Veronica, then past her to where Buck sat frozen by the fireplace. Actually, she said coolly, I'm looking for Travis Holloway, the architect who designed this house, and who holds sole title to it. The blood drained from both Veronica and Buck's faces. What is this about? Buck demanded, standing. Meredith turned to him with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mr. Sullivan, how convenient. You've saved me another stop. She reached in her leather portfolio. I have some documents that Mr. Holloway and I need to discuss regarding the future of Riverside Heights and several other properties you're currently involved with. Travis stepped forward, feeling his children close behind him. "I'm Travis Holloway," he said clearly. "And yes, we have quite a lot to discuss." As Veronica and Buck exchanged panicked glances, Travis gestured toward his study. "Shall we begin?" Chapter 4: Controlled Demolition. The study door closed with a soft click that somehow sounded final. Travis took his seat behind the custom mahogany desk. Another piece of his life he had designed and built himself. Meredith settled into the leather chair opposite him, while Buck remained standing, his body language oscillating between aggression and uncertainty. Veronica had attempted to follow them, but found herself firmly excluded. "This is a business discussion," Travis had informed her with clinical detachment. "Since you're neither an architect nor a developer, your presence isn't required." Now, in the wood-paneled sanctuary of his study, Travis observed Buck's mounting discomfort. "What's this about, Holloway?" Buck demanded. "If this is some kind of intimidation tactic." "Please sit down, Mr. Sullivan," Meredith interrupted. "What we're about to discuss affects approximately 60% of your current development portfolio." Buck reluctantly took a seat, his forced smile failing to mask his concern. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced, Ms. Whitman." "Meredith Whitman of Whitman Capital Partners." She laid her business card on the desk. "Until recently, we were passive investors in several projects you've developed. As of last week, we've initiated a complete divestment." Travis watched as recognition dawned on Buck's face. Whitman Capital Partners controlled a significant investment fund specializing in high-end real estate development, exactly the kind of projects Buck used to cement his reputation. "There must be some misunderstanding," Buck began, his voice adopting the smooth, reassuring tone that had doubtless charmed countless investors. "Our developments consistently outperform market projections." "The financial returns aren't the issue," Travis interjected. "It's the methods that concern Ms. Whitman and her associates." "Perhaps we should speak privately, Ms. Whitman." Buck shot Travis a warning look. Without disgruntled employees present, Meredith raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Holloway isn't an employee, Mr. Sullivan. He's my new partner." Buck's composure finally cracked. "Partner? What the hell are you playing at, Travis?" "We're establishing a new architectural and development firm," Travis explained calmly, "specializing in projects that have been compromised by, shall we say, unethical practices." "You can't possibly." "The Riverside Heights project will be our first acquisition," Meredith continued, as if Buck hadn't spoken. "We've already secured commitments from the primary investors to transfer development rights once certain information comes to light." Travis opened a folder on his desk. "We've documented 37 building code violations across your last 5 projects, Buck. Electrical systems that barely meet minimum standards, foundational shortcuts, material substitutions that wouldn't withstand serious inspection." He pushed a document forward. "This amendment to the Riverside contract you had me sign? The clause hiding your intention to substitute structural steel quality after my inspection phase? Highly illegal." "You're bluffing," Buck said, but sweat had appeared on his upper lip. "Every developer makes adjustments post-design. It's industry standard." "Endangering lives for profit isn't a standard I recognize," Travis replied. "Nor does the Municipal Building Safety Commission. They're quite interested in reviewing these findings." Buck leaned forward, voice lowered to a threatening whisper. "You know how this works, Travis? You come after me, I'll destroy you. One call to the right people, and you'll never work in this city again." "That would be concerning," Travis agreed, "if I hadn't already recorded you making similar threats over the past few months." He tapped his computer screen, which displayed a sound wave visualization. "Would you like to hear how you explain to my wife your plan to appropriate my designs while systematically undermining my professional reputation?" The blood drained from Buck's face. "You've been recording private conversations? That's illegal." "In some contexts, yes," Meredith acknowledged. "In others, such as documenting criminal conspiracy or within one's own property using security systems with clearly posted notification, perfectly admissible." Travis gestured to the small security notice framed by the entry to his study. "My home security system records audio and video in all common areas. It's disclosed at every entrance, as required by law. A system you and Veronica discussed disabling last month, if you recall. Buck stood abruptly. This meeting is over. Whatever you think you have, my lawyers will bury it and then bury you. Before you go, Meredith said, her voice stopping him at the door, you should know we've already spoken with Councilman Patterson about the zoning irregularities in the West Loop project. He was surprisingly eager to distance himself once we shared the documentary evidence. Buck's hand froze on the doorknob. The mention of Patterson, his most reliable political ally, hit its mark. Patterson would never. Self-preservation is a powerful motivator, Travis noted. As you yourself explained to Veronica while in my guest room 2 weeks ago. Buck turned slowly, reassessing Travis with something approaching genuine respect. What do you want? That's simple, Travis replied. I want you to sign these papers transferring developmental control of Riverside Heights to our new firm. Then I want you to take an extended vacation while we review the rest of your projects for acquisition. And if I refuse? Travis closed the folder. Then tomorrow morning, the building commission receives our full report. The state's attorney gets the recording of you discussing how to circumvent safety inspections, and the investors receive documentation of how you've been systematically overcharging while delivering substandard structures. Buck's jaw worked silently as he calculated his options. Finally, he stepped back to the desk. Let me see these papers. As Buck reviewed the documents, his face grew increasingly pale. The agreement wasn't just a transfer of Riverside Heights. It was a compulsory purchase framework for his entire development company at a fraction of its value. This is highway robbery, he muttered. No, Travis corrected. This is consequence. You try to steal my work and my reputation while sleeping with my wife. Consider yourself fortunate we're offering any compensation at all. Buck's head snapped up. You know about. I know everything, Travis said quietly. Every meeting, every conversation, every plan you two made. After a long moment, Buck reached for the pen Meredith offered. His signature was shaky but legible on each page. You've just made a powerful enemy. Holloway, he said as he finished. Travis smiled thinly. No, I've just neutralized one. There's a difference. After Buck stormed out, Meredith gathered the signed documents. Phase 1 complete, she noted. He'll try to fight this, of course. Let him, Travis replied. The digitally notarized copies are already with our attorneys, and the recordings have been secured. By the time he regroups, the Riverside transfer will be complete. And your wife? Meredith asked carefully. Travis's expression hardened. That's phase 2. She doesn't know it yet, but she lost everything the moment she invited Buck Sullivan into my home. They emerged from a study to find the Thanksgiving gathering in disarray. Most guests had departed, leaving only Veronica, the children, and a few lingering relatives. Buck was nowhere to be seen. What did you do? Veronica demanded, her voice shrill. Buck left looking like he'd seen a ghost. We concluded some business, Travis replied mildly. Ms. Whitman, thank you for coming on such short notice. My children, Liam and Tara, the teenagers, who had been watching from the hallway, stepped forward uncertainly. A pleasure, Meredith said, assessing them with genuine interest. Your father is an extraordinary architect and businessman. You should be very proud. Ms. Whitman has just helped me secure the largest project of my career, Travis explained. We'll be restructuring Riverside Heights with complete creative control. But that's Buck's project, Veronica protested. Not anymore, Travis replied. Now, if you'll excuse us, Ms. Whitman and I have further business to discuss. I'll be spending the night at my downtown apartment. Children, you're welcome to join me if you'd prefer. Tara immediately stepped toward her father. I'll get my overnight bag. Liam hesitated, looking between his parents before reluctantly moving to his sister's side. Yeah, me too. As the children went to gather their things, Veronica grabbed Travis's arm. You can't just take my children. Our children, Travis corrected, removing her hand, who are old enough to decide where they spend the night, especially after watching their mother banish their father to the garage during Thanksgiving dinner. That was a joke, Veronica insisted. You're overreacting. We both know it wasn't, Travis replied. Just as we both know where you've been spending your afternoons for the past 8 months. The color drained from Veronica's face. Travis, I can explain. Save it. He cut her off. The time for explanations has long passed. Now we move to consequences. Meredith watched this exchange with professional detachment before checking her watch. We should proceed if we're going to make the call with Tokyo, Travis. He nodded and turned to follow the children upstairs, leaving Veronica standing alone in the entryway, the wreckage of her carefully constructed life settling around her like dust after an implosion. Chapter 5. Foundation Removal. News of Buck Sullivan's sudden divestment from Riverside Heights sent shock waves through Chicago's development community. Within days, rumors circulated about financial irregularities, structural concerns, and potential building code violations. Travis and Meredith's newly formed company, Holloway Whitman Partners, officially announced their acquisition of the troubled project to ensure its completion with the highest standards of safety and design integrity. Travis moved permanently to his downtown apartment, which quickly became headquarters for their expanding operations. Liam and Tara divided their time between their parents, though Tara increasingly chose to stay with her father while Liam remained torn between loyalties. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, Travis sat across from his lawyer, signing the final documents. She's contesting everything, Philip Barnes informed him, sliding another form forward. The prenuptial agreement, the property divisions, even custody, although the children are nearly adults. As expected, Travis replied, signing his name with deliberate strokes. Has she found new representation yet? Third law firm this week, Philip confirmed. The first two withdrew when they reviewed the evidence packets you provided. Travis nodded. The packets contained meticulously documented evidence of Veronica's affair, her conspiracy with Buck to undermine Travis professionally, and most damagingly, her systematic manipulation of family finances, including several instances of forging Travis's signature to access his personal accounts. And the house? Travis asked. Given that you owned it prior to the marriage and maintained sole title, her claim is weak, especially considering the documentation showing she was planning to move out to live with Sullivan. Travis permitted himself a small smile. Veronica's text messages discussing which furniture to take from Travis's pretentious architectural showcase had been particularly useful. What about Sullivan? Any counterattacks yet? Philip shuffled his papers. His attorneys sent a letter claiming duress during the signing of the transfer documents. Our response included audio excerpts from his discussions with Veronica about destroying your career. They've gone quiet since. They're regrouping, Travis noted. Sullivan won't surrender his company without a fight. A fight he's rapidly losing allies for, Philip pointed out. 3 of the city council members he regularly dealt with have publicly distanced themselves. Something about an ethics investigation? Meredith's contribution, Travis explained. Her brother wasn't Sullivan's only victim. She's assembled quite a coalition of people with grievances and evidence. After the meeting, Travis returned to find Tara sitting at his drafting table, studying the Riverside Heights plans with surprising understanding. You've changed the central courtyard, she observed without looking up. It's more accessible now. Travis paused, reassessing his daughter yet again. You have a good eye. The original design was more visually striking, but created unnecessary barriers. Like Mom, Tara said quietly. Beautiful but full of barriers. Travis set down his briefcase. You don't have to choose sides, Tara. I already did, she replied, finally meeting his gaze. When I realized she was lying about you. Liam still believes her version, that you were always cold, always working, never really loved any of us enough. And what do you believe? Tara gestured to the blueprints. I believe people reveal themselves through what they create. You built spaces for us to live in, to be together. She built narratives where she was always the victim. Travis felt a swell of pride mingled with regret. At 14, Tara already showed more insight than he had at twice her age. Your brother will find his own way, Travis said. Right now, he's hurt and confused. He's being an idiot, Tara corrected. Yesterday, he told me Buck offered to take him racing in his Ferrari this weekend. Like that's not totally inappropriate and obviously manipulative. Travis stiffened. Your mother is allowing this. Encouraging it, Tara confirmed. Says it's important for Liam to have a positive male role model now that you've abandoned the family. Travis reached for his phone, then stopped himself. Reacting emotionally would play into Veronica's narrative. Instead, he needed to accelerate the next phase of his plan. We have a family court appearance on Friday, he told Tara. The judge will likely establish temporary arrangements while the divorce proceeds. Would you be comfortable stating your preference to live primarily with me? Tara nodded firmly. Absolutely. And I have screenshots of Mom's texts about you that might help. She doesn't know I can see her iMessages on the family iPad. You're quite resourceful, Travis noted with a mixture of admiration and concern. But I need you to remember something important. Our goal isn't to destroy your mother. It's to protect ourselves and ensure consequences for actions. What about Buck? Tara asked. Are you going to destroy him? Travis considered the question carefully. Buck Sullivan built a career by destroying others. I'm simply ensuring an appropriate response. That evening, Travis received a call from an unknown number. He answered to find Detective Roland Pierce on the line. An unexpected development. Mr. Holloway, the detective began without preamble. I understand you've had some business dealings with Theodore Sullivan recently. That's correct, Travis confirmed, immediately alert. May I ask what this is regarding? I'll lead a task force investigating development corruption, Pierce explained. Sullivan's name features prominently in our files. I've noticed some unusual activity around his company in recent weeks. I acquired certain interests in his developments, Travis acknowledged carefully. All properly documented and above board. A pause. That's what interests me, Mr. Holloway. In 15 years tracking Sullivan, I've never seen him surrender control of anything willingly. Yet he signed over his flagship project to you without a public fight. Perhaps he recognized inherent problems with the development. Perhaps, Pierce agreed. Or perhaps you have something on him that even he couldn't risk becoming public. Something that might interest my task force. Travis weighed his options carefully. An alliance with law enforcement could provide additional leverage, but it would mean surrendering control of the timing and possibly limiting his options for dealing with Sullivan completely. I have documentation of certain building code violations, Travis offered, along with evidence suggesting systematic bribery of inspectors. Would that be relevant to your investigation? He could almost hear Pierce's smile through the phone. Extremely relevant, Mr. Holloway. I'd very much like to meet to discuss this further. They arranged a meeting for the following day. After hanging up, Travis called Meredith to update her on this new development. Pierce is legitimate, she confirmed after he explained. Has a reputation as incorruptible, which is why he hasn't advanced further in the department. If he's reaching out directly, Sullivan must be a significant target. Can we use this without compromising our overall plan? Travis asked. We'll need to adjust the timeline, Meredith conceded. But having law enforcement pressure could actually help isolate Sullivan from his remaining allies faster than we could manage privately. And Veronica? Meredith hesitated. The police involvement complicates things. Any evidence connecting her to Sullivan's business practices becomes more delicate. She wasn't involved in the building code violations, Travis noted. Her interests were purely personal. Then we proceed as planned for that aspect, Meredith decided. Speaking of which, have you spoken to Naomi recently? Not since she provided the initial information. You might want to call her, Meredith suggested. My sources indicate Veronica is planning to shift narratives. Instead of the cold, absent husband story, she's now presenting herself as a victim of emotional abuse who sought comfort elsewhere. Travis closed his eyes briefly. Of course she is. After ending the call, Travis worked late into the night, preparing documents for Detective Pierce while simultaneously finalizing the next phase of his personal plan. It was well past midnight when his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. This has gone too far. Meet me tomorrow. B.S. Travis studied the message, considering its implications. Sullivan reaching out directly likely meant his other options were evaporating. The timing, just before Travis's meeting with Pierce, suggested desperation. Golden bean coffee. 7 a.m. Travis responded, then added, come alone. The meeting could provide useful intelligence, or it could be a trap. Either way, Travis would be prepared. Chapter 6, Points of Failure. The Golden Bean was nearly empty at 6:45 a.m. when Travis arrived. He selected a corner table with clear sight lines to all entrances and positioned his phone to record any conversation. 15 minutes later, Buck Sullivan entered, looking notably diminished. His designer suit appeared slept in, his normally immaculate hair disheveled. "You look terrible," Travis observed as Buck took the seat opposite him. "Cut the shit," Holloway, Buck growled. "You've made your point. Name your real price." Travis sipped his coffee. "I already did. The contracts you signed were quite clear. Those contracts were signed under duress, and we both know it." Buck leaned forward. "Listen, I underestimated you. That's on me. But this vendetta is affecting innocent people now." "Innocent people?" Travis repeated. "Like who?" "My employees, for starters. 47 people work for Sullivan Development. They didn't sleep with your wife. No, they just helped you create unsafe buildings and defraud investors," Travis countered. "But you're right. Not everyone deserves the same consequences. That's why we're retaining most of your staff during the restructuring." Buck blinked in surprise. "Restructuring? You're actually going through with taking over my company?" "It's already done," Travis informed him. "The board voted yesterday after reviewing evidence of your creative accounting. The remaining formalities will be completed by month's end." Buck's face flushed with anger. "This is about Veronica, isn't it? You couldn't keep your wife interested, so you're taking it out on me professionally." Travis raised an eyebrow. "Is that what Veronica told you? That I was inattentive? Emotionally unavailable, perhaps?" "Among other things," Buck muttered. "Did she mention that while I was designing the Riverside project, working 16-hour days at your insistence, she was spending our anniversary fund on lingerie for your benefit?" Travis's voice remained perfectly calm. "Or that she told our children I was embarrassing because of my working-class background?" Buck had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Look, whatever went on between you and Veronica was systematically undermined by both of you." Travis completed the sentence. "You saw an opportunity to acquire both my wife and my professional output while discarding me in the process. Now you're experiencing the consequences. So that's it? You'll destroy everything I've built." Travis leaned forward. "No, Buck. I'm going to rebuild it. Properly, safely, and ethically. The Sullivan name will be removed from all properties and replaced with legitimate developments that don't cut corners or endanger lives." "You self-righteous prick," Buck spat. "You think you're so much better than me? At least I'm honest about going after what I want, including other men's wives." Buck's laugh was ugly. "Especially that. You know how many developers are sleeping with their colleagues' wives? It's practically a professional courtesy at this point. Veronica was looking for an upgrade the moment she realized you'd never really belong in her world." Travis absorbed this without visible reaction. "Is that why you're meeting Detective Pierce tomorrow? To discuss professional courtesies?" The blood drained from Buck's face. "What are you talking about? Pierce's task force has been building a case against development corruption for years. Your name features prominently in their files. Did you think I wouldn't coordinate with law enforcement eventually?" Buck's expression shifted from shock to calculation. "You gave him information about me. I provided evidence of building code violations," Travis clarified. "The rest of your activities they've been tracking independently. Something about suspicious payments to zoning officials." "You're bluffing," Buck insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. Travis removed a folder from his briefcase and slid it across the table. "Copies of what I provided Pierce. You'll note it focuses specifically on structural and safety violations, not your broader business practices." Buck scanned the documents, his expression growing increasingly grim. "This is comprehensive. I'm thorough," Travis replied simply. "But you'll notice there's nothing there about your relationship with Veronica or your attempts to appropriate my designs. I've kept that separate." Buck looked up sharply. "What?" "Because despite what you and Veronica believe, this isn't about petty revenge. It's about accountability." Travis reclaimed the folder. "The building violations are a public safety matter that belonged with authorities. The rest is between us." Buck studied Travis with new wariness. "What exactly do you want from me?" "Step down voluntarily from all remaining positions. Sign the transfer documents for your remaining properties." Make a public statement about pursuing new opportunities that necessitated these changes. Do that, and your personal life remains personal. And if I refuse? Travis stood, gathering his belongings. Then, in addition to the building code violations, Detective Pierce receives documentation of certain offshore transactions that might interest the Financial Crimes Division, along with records of your meetings with Councilman Patterson regarding zoning adjustments. Buck's face hardened into resignation. You really do have everything, don't you? Not everything, Travis replied quietly. But enough. After leaving Buck to contemplate his rapidly diminishing options, Travis headed directly to the courthouse for the family court hearing. He arrived to find Philip already waiting, accompanied by a grim-faced Tara. "Mom brought Buck," she informed him, "and she's wearing waterproof mascara." Travis squeezed his daughter's shoulder supportively. "Ready for this?" Tara nodded firmly. "I brought the screenshots and diary entries like Philip suggested, plus the recording of her telling Liam that you only married her for social connections." Inside the courtroom, Veronica sat with her newest attorney, a sharp-featured woman with a reputation for aggressive divorce litigation. Buck sat directly behind them, his presence a calculated statement. Liam occupied the seat beside his mother, studiously avoiding eye contact with Travis or his sister. Judge Marion Wilkins, a veteran of family court with a no-nonsense reputation, called the hearing to order promptly. After initial statements from both attorneys, she addressed the issue of temporary custody and visitation. Given the children's ages, she noted, their preferences carry significant weight. "I understand both children are present today." What followed was precisely the performance Travis had anticipated. Veronica presented herself as a devoted mother whose marriage had deteriorated due to Travis's emotional distance and workaholic tendencies. She described seeking emotional support, notably avoiding the word affair, only after years of neglect. When questioned directly, Liam reluctantly supported his mother's narrative, though his discomfort was evident. "Dad was always working," he mumbled. "Mom was the one who was actually there for us." Judge Wilkins then turned to Tara, who sat straight-backed and composed. "And you, young lady, what's your perspective on these arrangements?" "My father has always been present in meaningful ways," Tara stated clearly. "He designed spaces in our home specifically for family activities. He attended every school event when not traveling for work. He taught me architecture principles when I showed interest." She paused, then added, "My mother told different stories depending on her audience. To her friends, my father was her brilliant husband. To us, he was distant and difficult. To Mr. Sullivan, he was an obstacle to be removed." Veronica gasped audibly. "Tara, how can you say such things?" Judge Wilkins raised a hand for silence. "You have evidence supporting these assertions?" Tara nodded and presented her folder of screenshots, diary entries, and recorded conversations. As the judge reviewed them, Veronica's attorney leaned over to whisper urgently in her client's ear. The temporary arrangements established by Judge Wilkins largely favored Travis. Liam and Tara would primarily reside with him, with Veronica granted weekend visitation. More significantly, the judge ordered a full financial audit after reviewing evidence of Veronica's manipulation of family accounts. Outside the courtroom, Veronica intercepted Travis, her face contorted with rage beneath a carefully maintained veneer of dignity. "You've poisoned my daughter against me," she hissed. "No, Veronica," Travis replied calmly. "You did that yourself with every lie you told." Buck approached, placing a restraining hand on Veronica's arm. "This isn't the place," he muttered. "There are reporters outside." Travis regarded them both with detached interest. "Planning a united front for the cameras? I'd reconsider that strategy, Buck." Detective Pierce might find the optics interesting for his investigation. Buck's expression hardened. "This isn't over, Holloway." "On the contrary," Travis replied. "It's entering the final phase." As Travis walked away with Tara and Philip, he heard Liam call his name. He turned to find his son standing awkwardly between his parents and Travis, uncertainty written across his face. Can I come with you today?" Liam asked hesitantly. Veronica immediately protested. Liam, we discussed this. You're coming home with me. Travis simply extended his hand toward his son. You're always welcome, Liam. Always. After a moment's hesitation, Liam stepped toward his father. It wasn't forgiveness or reconciliation. Not yet, but it was a beginning. That evening, as Travis and his children settled into the downtown apartment, his phone rang with news that would accelerate everything. Detective Pierce's voice was tense with controlled excitement. Sullivan just tried to leave the country on a private jet, he reported. We intercepted him at the airport with evidence of flight risk. He's being held for questioning regarding the building code violations and several other matters that have conveniently come to light. What kind of matters? Travis asked, though he already suspected. Financial irregularities, apparent bribes to zoning officials, and most interestingly, evidence suggesting he deliberately sabotaged competitors' projects through compromised inspections. Pierce paused. This is bigger than just Sullivan, Mr. Holloway. We're looking at systematic corruption throughout the development approval process. I'm not entirely surprised, Travis admitted. There's something else, Pierce added. Sullivan's trying to cut a deal. He's offering information on other developers, politicians, anyone he can use as leverage, including, apparently, information about your wife. Travis closed his eyes briefly. Ex-wife, soon enough. And whatever he's claiming about Veronica, I likely already know. Maybe, Pierce conceded, but there's one detail you might find interesting. According to Sullivan, your wife approached him initially, specifically because of your work on Riverside Heights. Said something about using your connection to him to secure a position with his charitable foundation. The final piece clicked into place. Veronica hadn't just fallen into an affair with Buck Sullivan. She had deliberately targeted him as Travis's most prominent client, positioning herself to transition smoothly to a new life once Travis had been professionally compromised. Thank you for that information, Detective, Travis said after a moment. It confirms certain suspicions. After ending the call, Travis sat silently at his drafting table, contemplating the structure of what was to come. The foundation had been removed. The support beams were compromised. All that remained was the controlled collapse of what had once been his marriage and Veronica's carefully constructed social position. Travis began preparing the final phase of his plan. Chapter 7. Excavation. The Sullivan Foundation Winter Gala had been Chicago's premier social event for over a decade, a carefully orchestrated display of wealth, influence, and philanthropic virtue signaling. This year's event, hastily rebranded as the Chicago Children's Welfare Celebration after Buck Sullivan's dramatic fall from grace, promised to be unusually tense. Travis adjusted his bow tie in the mirror, noting with detached satisfaction how much had changed in the 6 weeks since Thanksgiving. Sullivan Development was now effectively under Holloway Whitman Partners' control. Buck himself remained ensnared in an expanding investigation, released on bail, but essentially radioactive in business circles. Most significantly, what had begun as a building code investigation had metastasized into a sweeping corruption probe that threatened numerous city officials. You look like a villain preparing for his big scene, Meredith observed from the doorway of Travis's apartment. Not a villain, Travis corrected. Just someone ensuring consequences. Meredith's steel gray gown complemented her hair perfectly. The guest list confirms Veronica will be attending. Are you certain this is how you want to proceed? It's fitting, Travis replied. She and Buck planned to announce their relationship at this very event. The venue should remain the same, even if the announcement differs. At precisely 8 o'clock, Travis and Meredith arrived at the Grand Horizon Hotel. The ballroom glittered with Chicago's elite, many of whom greeted Travis with new deference, a consequence of his company's meteoric rise and Sullivan's corresponding collapse. Travis Holloway, remarked Bradley Winston, president of the city's largest bank. The man of the hour. Your acquisition of Riverside Heights was masterfully executed. Simply a matter of identifying structural weaknesses, Travis replied with deliberate ambiguity. He spotted Veronica across the room, holding court among her social circle. She had maintained her position on the gala committee despite Buck's disgrace, leveraging family connections to distance herself from the scandal. Liam stood awkwardly at her side, uncomfortable in his tuxedo, but dutifully playing the role of supportive son. Tara, who had refused to attend with her mother, entered on the arm of Vincent Reeves, Travis's oldest friend who had returned from Europe to support him through the divorce. "Your ex-wife looks like she swallowed something sour," Vincent observed as he joined Travis by the bar. "The rumors about tonight must have reached her." "What rumors would those be?" Travis asked mildly. Vincent grinned. "That Holloway Whitman Partners is announcing a major new foundation, one that might overshadow certain other charitable endeavors." "People do love to speculate," Travis acknowledged. His phone buzzed with a text from Naomi. "She knows something's happening. Just tried pumping me for information. Ready when you are." The evening progressed through dinner with the practiced rhythm of such events: bland speeches, performative check presentations, and strategic networking. Throughout it all, Travis observed Veronica growing increasingly tense as she noted his comfortable interactions with Chicago's power brokers, many of whom had previously been her exclusive social territory. After the main course, Councilwoman Eleanor Hamilton approached the podium for what was ostensibly a routine civic recognition. Instead, she stunned the room by announcing her immediate resignation due to personal reasons, her voice barely steady as she referenced her cooperation with ongoing investigations into municipal governance. A ripple of shocked murmurs swept through the ballroom. Hamilton had been one of Buck Sullivan's strongest allies on the city council and a close friend of Veronica's family. "Did you know about this?" Meredith whispered. Travis nodded slightly. Detective Pierce mentioned additional developments were forthcoming. Hamilton must have decided to get ahead of the indictments. As coffee was served, the event chairman signaled for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have an unscheduled announcement from Holloway Whitman Partners, our new platinum sponsor for this evening." Travis approached the podium with measured steps, aware of every eye in the room, particularly Veronica's shocked gaze. He had conspicuously avoided philanthropy throughout their marriage, allowing her to manage that aspect of their public image. "Good evening," he began. "Recent events have reminded us all that integrity in construction isn't merely a professional ideal. It's a matter of public safety and trust." He paused, allowing the pointed reference to Sullivan's building code violations to register. "Tonight, I'm pleased to announce the establishment of the Holloway Design Scholarship Program, which will provide full university funding for promising architectural students from disadvantaged backgrounds. This $20 million endowment will ensure that talent, not privilege, determines access to education and opportunity." The applause was enthusiastic, particularly from those who recognized the implicit contrast with Sullivan's more self-aggrandizing charity work. Travis continued, his voice steady. "Additionally, Holloway Whitman Partners will be establishing an independent building safety verification process for all new developments in Chicago, offered pro bono to ensure no financial barriers to implementation." As Travis outlined the details, he watched Veronica's expression shift from surprise to calculated assessment. She was already plotting how to position herself within these new initiatives, a predictable response he had anticipated and prepared for. After concluding his announcement to considerable acclaim, Travis navigated through congratulatory conversations until he reached Naomi, who stood strategically near Veronica's table. "Impressive speech," Naomi said loudly enough for Veronica to hear. "Especially the scholarship program. Such a contrast to foundation work that mainly serves to advance social standing." Veronica's composure finally cracked. "If you have something to say, Naomi, say it directly." "I believe I just did," Naomi replied coolly. "Though I'm surprised you're still claiming foundation expertise, considering recent revelations." "What revelations?" demanded one of Veronica's friends, instantly alert to potential gossip. Travis stepped forward. "I'm sure Naomi is referring to private matters. Private like your wife approaching Buck Sullivan with a proposition before you were even assigned to the Riverside project?" Naomi asked with false innocence. "Or private, like her explaining to the Sullivan Foundation Board that she could deliver her architect husband's services at discounted rates in exchange for a director position?" The blood drained from Veronica's face. "That's a malicious lie." "Is it?" Travis asked quietly. "Because the Sullivan Foundation Board minutes document your presentation quite thoroughly. as does Buck's sworn statement to Detective Pierce. Veronica's friends drew back slightly, social instincts instantly alert to the shifting dynamics. "Travis," Veronica began, her voice taking on the wounded tone she had perfected. "You can't possibly believe." "What I believe is immaterial," Travis interrupted. "The documentation exists. Your initial approach to Sullivan predated our marriage difficulties by nearly a year. You didn't fall into an affair because I was distant. You orchestrated a professional connection with the specific intent of securing your next position." The silence that fell over their immediate vicinity was deafening. In social circles where appearances were paramount, the calculation behind Veronica's actions was far more damning than the affair itself. "Mom." Liam's voice was small and confused. "Is that true?" Veronica turned to her son, desperation creeping into her expression. "Liam, you know your father's just bitter about." "The board minutes," Liam interrupted. "Are they real?" "They're real," Naomi confirmed. "I accessed them when I began suspecting something wasn't right. Dated 14 months ago, when you were still telling everyone what a genius your husband was." Veronica's social mask crumbled entirely. "You had no right to access private foundation documents." "As a board member, I had every right," Naomi countered. "Unlike you, who was denied a position due to ethical concerns, which I now realize refer to your targeting of your husband's professional connection to Sullivan." More guests had subtly gathered around their conversation, drawn by the unmistakable scent of social blood in the water. Veronica, with the instincts of a lifetime socialite, recognized the catastrophic collapse of her position. "This is hardly the venue for such discussions," she attempted, reaching for dignity. "Interesting," Travis noted. "That's precisely what Buck said at the courthouse. Yet you both selected this very event to announce your relationship originally, before certain complications arose." The final blow came from an unexpected quarter. Mrs. Abernathy, the elderly doyen of Chicago society whose approval Veronica had courted for years, spoke up from nearby. "I must say, Veronica, this lacks a certain grace. Calculated affairs are one thing. We're all adults here. But leveraging one's husband professionally while simultaneously undermining him, it suggests a troubling character." The social execution was swift and merciless. Within minutes, Veronica found herself subtly isolated, her usual allies making excuses to circulate elsewhere. Liam, shocked and confused, stood apart from both parents, processing this new understanding of his mother's actions. Travis approached his son, speaking quietly. "You don't have to choose sides tonight, Liam. Take time to think." Liam looked up, his expression pained. "All this time, she said you were the one who changed, that your success made you cold." "People often project their own failings onto others," Travis observed, "your mother included." As Veronica attempted to salvage her dignity by gathering her things to leave, Travis felt a surprising absence of triumph. The orchestrated social destruction of his wife had been meticulously planned and perfectly executed, yet the victory felt hollow compared to the pain evident in his son's eyes. Meredith joined him as Veronica made her exit, followed by a few remaining loyalists. "Perfectly executed," she murmured, "though I note you didn't reveal everything. Some consequences are best delivered privately," Travis replied, watching as Naomi discreetly handed envelopes to several influential board members, containing evidence of Veronica's attempts to divert charitable funds for personal use, another discovery from Damon's thorough investigation. By morning, Veronica Holloway would be quietly removed from every charitable board and social committee she had spent years cultivating. Her carefully constructed identity as a philanthropic force would be systematically dismantled, not through public scandal, but through the more devastating mechanism of private consensus among Chicago's elite. As the gala wound down, Travis collected Tara and prepared to leave. Liam approached tentatively. "Can I come home with you tonight?" he asked, echoing his question from the courthouse weeks earlier. "Of course," Travis replied. "Your room is always ready." The three Holloways departed together, leaving behind the wreckage of Veronica's social standing, a demolition as precise and controlled as any Travis had ever designed. Chapter 8. Reinforcement. 3 months after the gala, Travis sat in Judge Wilkins' courtroom for the final divorce hearing. The proceedings had accelerated dramatically following Buck Sullivan's plea agreement with the district attorney's office, which had included sworn testimony about Veronica's premeditated approach to Sullivan and her active participation in plans to undermine Travis professionally. The financial audit had uncovered Veronica's systematic misappropriation of funds from joint accounts, including several instances of forged signatures. Combined with the ironclad prenuptial agreement Travis had insisted upon, a document Veronica had signed willingly, believing she would never need to contest it, the outcome was never in serious doubt. The court finds the prenuptial agreement valid and enforceable, Judge Wilkins announced. Additionally, given the documented financial improprieties, Mrs. Holloway's claims to additional assets are denied. Veronica sat stiffly beside her newest attorney, her expression frozen in dignified outrage. The past months had seen her social and financial position erode with stunning speed. Removed from charitable boards, excluded from social events, and now facing the loss of the financial security she had taken for granted. Regarding the family residence, the judge continued, as Mr. Holloway maintained sole title and the property was specifically excluded in the prenuptial agreement. Ownership remains with him exclusively. Mrs. Holloway is granted 30 days to remove her personal belongings. Travis listened impassively. The house meant nothing to him now. He had already engaged an architect to design a new home for himself and the children, incorporating elements they had collectively selected. He planned to sell the existing property once Veronica vacated. Finally, regarding custody of the minor children, Judge Wilkins reviewed her notes. Given their ages and clearly stated preferences, primary residence is awarded to Mr. Holloway, with standard visitation rights for Mrs. Holloway. The judge fixed Veronica with a stern gaze. I must note that the court takes a dim view of parental alienation attempts, Mrs. Holloway. The documented evidence of your systematic undermining of the children's relationship with their father will be considered should any future custody disputes arise. After the judge finalized the divorce decree, Travis remained seated while Veronica swept out, trailed by her increasingly beleaguered attorney. The contrast between her current circumstances and the life she had envisioned with Buck Sullivan could hardly have been more stark. Sullivan himself was awaiting sentencing on multiple fraud charges, his empire dismantled, his reputation destroyed. Outside the courthouse, Philip offered congratulations on the favorable ruling. A complete victory, as expected, though I must say, her attorney seemed surprisingly unprepared. Her fourth in as many months, Travis noted. The previous 3 withdrew after reviewing the evidence. This one took the case last week out of desperation. What now? Philip asked. You've systematically dismantled both Sullivan and your ex-wife. Mission accomplished, I would say. Travis considered the question. Not quite. There's one remaining matter. That evening, Travis invited Liam and Tara to the downtown apartment for dinner. Over the past months, their relationship had gradually strengthened, though Liam still maintained some contact with Veronica despite her increasingly desperate attempts to regain his unquestioning loyalty. The divorce is final, Travis informed them as they gathered in the living room afterward. I want to discuss next steps with both of you. Tara, now 15, had blossomed during these months, her natural intelligence finding expression in a growing interest in design. Does this mean we're selling the house? She asked. Yes, Travis confirmed. I've commissioned a new home design based on elements we've all discussed. Construction begins next month on the lakefront property. Liam, less comfortable with direct conversation, examined the preliminary sketches Travis had laid out. These look really thoughtful, he admitted. The music studio especially. You mentioned wanting space for your band, Travis explained. I took that seriously. A moment of awkward silence fell before Liam spoke again. Dad, I need to ask something. Are you ever going to forgive Mom? Travis studied his son's face, recognizing the complex emotions beneath the question. Forgiveness isn't really the issue, Liam. Your mother made calculated decisions that hurt this family. She's experiencing the natural consequences of those choices. But she's suffering, Liam insisted. She called me crying yesterday because her credit cards were declined. All her friends have abandoned her. Those aren't friends, Tara interjected. They're social climbers who followed her when it was advantageous and dropped her when it wasn't. She's still our mother, Liam argued. Travis leaned forward. Liam, listen carefully. Your mother isn't destitute. The divorce settlement included a reasonable cash payment and ongoing support. If she's experiencing financial difficulties, it's because she's continuing to live beyond sustainable means. But nothing, Travis said firmly. I haven't pursued criminal charges for the forged signatures or financial misappropriation. I haven't publicly exposed her manipulation of charitable funds. Those were choices I made to minimize impact on you and your sister. But I won't artificially support the lifestyle she built while planning my professional destruction. Liam fell silent, absorbing this. And Buck, he finally asked. Mom says you're the reason he's facing prison time. Buck Sullivan is facing prison because he consistently violated building codes, creating unsafe structures for profit, Travis corrected. He additionally engaged in bribery, fraud, and witness intimidation. Those are his actions, not mine. Tara touched her brother's arm. Liam, I know you liked him, but he was using you to hurt Dad. Those offers to take you racing in his Ferrari? Always time when Dad had important meetings, forcing him to choose between his work and stopping you from being with someone dangerous. Liam's expression suggested this perspective hadn't occurred to him. I didn't realize. Manipulation rarely announces itself, Travis observed. That's what makes it effective. The conversation shifted to more immediate concerns, school, activities, plans for the summer. As the evening concluded, Travis presented each child with a small box. What's this? Tara asked, opening hers to reveal a polished brass key. Keys to the apartment, Travis explained. I've established separate living trusts for each of you, with this property as the primary asset. Regardless of what happens in the future, you'll always have a secure home. Liam stared at his key with uncharacteristic emotion. You're giving us the apartment? But it's your home. I'm building a new home, Travis reminded him. This ensures you both have independence and security that can't be compromised by anyone, including me. It was the reassurance Liam needed most. Proof that Travis's actions weren't about control or manipulation, but about creating genuine security for his children. For the first time since the divorce began, Liam initiated a hug with his father. Thank you, he said simply. After the children departed, Tara to a school friend's home, Liam reluctantly returning to spend the weekend with Veronica, Travis received an unexpected call from Detective Pierce. Sullivan's sentencing is next week, Pierce informed him. His attorney is making a last-ditch effort to reduce his prison time. They're suggesting that you orchestrated his downfall out of personal vengeance. An interesting theory, Travis responded neutrally. Though it doesn't explain the building code violations documented years before I became involved. No, Pierce agreed. But I thought you should know they're trying to drag your ex-wife into it, claiming she was somehow coerced or manipulated into her relationship with Sullivan. Travis almost laughed. That contradicts Sullivan's own sworn testimony about Veronica approaching him first. Desperate men try desperate strategies, Pierce noted. In any case, the DA isn't concerned. The evidence is overwhelming regardless of motivation. After ending the call, Travis poured himself a rare glass of whiskey and stood at the window overlooking the city he had helped shape through his architecture. The systematic dismantling of Buck Sullivan and Veronica had unfolded exactly as designed, each element failing precisely when and how Travis had intended. Yet the victory brought less satisfaction than he had anticipated. Not because he regretted his actions. Travis Holloway was not a man given to regret, but because the process had revealed how hollow their betrayal had been from the start. Sullivan, for all his apparent power, had built his empire on fraudulent practices and bribery. Veronica had constructed her social identity through calculated performance rather than genuine connection. Neither had been worthy opponents. Neither had truly understood what they were dismantling when they targeted Travis's life and work. His phone buzzed with a text from Meredith. Sullivan's lawyer reached out, offering information in exchange for support at sentencing. Interesting? Travis considered briefly before responding. No deals. Let the process complete as designed. Some structures, once revealed as fundamentally compromised, couldn't be salvaged. They could only be demolished completely to make way for something new. Chapter 9. New Construction. 2 years after the Thanksgiving that had marked the beginning of the end, Travis stood on the terrace of his newly completed lakefront home. The structure embodied his architectural philosophy. Clean lines harmonizing with natural surroundings, spaces designed for both community and reflection, technological innovation serving human needs rather than dominating them. "It's really something, Dad," Tara said, joining him at the railing. Now 17, she had grown into a poised young woman with a promising future in architectural design. "I can see elements from your early work, but it's also completely new." "That's the point of evolution," Travis replied. "Incorporate what works while discarding what doesn't." The house was hosting its first major gathering, a combination housewarming and celebration of Holloway Whitman Partners' completion of the reimagined Riverside Heights, now recognized as the most innovative mixed-use development in the city. The project had won national awards for both design excellence and safety innovations. Inside, the spacious main room buzzed with conversation as Chicago's business and creative leaders mingled with Travis's oldest friends from Detroit. Vincent Reeves was entertaining a group with stories from their college days, while Meredith Whitman discussed expansion plans with potential investors. Notable by their absence were Buck Sullivan and Veronica. Sullivan was serving the second year of a 7-year sentence for fraud, bribery, and building code violations. His cooperation with authorities had implicated several city officials, leading to a sweeping anti-corruption initiative that had transformed Chicago's development approval process. Veronica had relocated to Phoenix after exhausting her financial resources and social connections in Chicago. Her occasional attempts to re-establish contact with the children had gradually decreased as both Liam and Tara set clear boundaries on their relationship with her. Liam's flight landed, Tara reported, checking her phone. He should be here in about an hour. Now in his first year at Berklee College of Music, Liam had gradually reconciled with his father, though the process had been neither quick nor easy. Their relationship had required careful rebuilding, with Travis respecting Liam's need for independence while consistently demonstrating reliability. "Good," Travis said. "I've been looking forward to hearing about his composition project." As twilight settled over the lake, Detective Pierce, now Captain Pierce following his promotion to head the expanded anti-corruption task force, approached Travis with a handshake. "Quite a transformation from 2 years ago," Pierce observed, "both professionally and personally." "Necessary reconstruction," Travis replied. "Sometimes systems need complete rebuilding rather than superficial repairs." Pierce nodded thoughtfully. Sullivan's attorney filed another appeal last week, still trying to reduce his sentence by claiming he was somehow the victim in all this. "Some people never accept responsibility," Travis noted without particular rancor. "How's the wider investigation progressing?" 3 more indictments coming next month," Pierce confirmed. "The evidence trail Sullivan provided opened doors we'd been trying to access for years. Though I suspect you already knew the potential implications when you first approached me." Travis merely smiled. "I had some architectural insights into structural weaknesses." As guests began gathering for dinner, Travis observed the community he had carefully constructed to replace what had been lost. Not merely professional connections or social alliances, but genuine relationships built on mutual respect and shared values. Meredith joined him as he surveyed the gathering. "Reflecting on your handiwork?" she asked. "Appreciating the contrast," Travis clarified. 2 years ago, I sat in a garage while my wife entertained her lover in my home. And now Sullivan sits in a cell while you've rebuilt everything he tried to take from you," Meredith noted. "Quite the reversal." "Not reversal," Travis corrected. "Evolution. I'm not interested in simply inverting the previous dynamic. I've designed something entirely new." The doorbell announced Liam's arrival. Travis greeted his son with genuine warmth. noting the increasing confidence in his bearing and the absence of the defensive posture that had characterized him during the divorce. "The house is amazing, Dad," Liam said after receiving the grand tour. "Especially the studio space. I brought some of my new compositions to try out on the equipment. I'm looking forward to hearing them," Travis replied. "Everything is set up as you specified." As dinner was served in the expansive dining room overlooking the illuminated Chicago skyline, Vincent proposed a toast. "To Travis Holloway," he announced, raising his glass. "A man who builds structures that last, in architecture and in life." The guests applauded appreciatively, unaware of the precise significance of the toast to those who had witnessed the systematic dismantling and rebuilding of Travis's life. Later that evening, as the gathering wound down, Liam approached his father with uncharacteristic hesitation. "I got an email from Mom yesterday," he said quietly. "She wants to come visit during spring break. Says she's changed." Travis considered his response carefully. "That's your decision, Liam. You're an adult now. What would you do?" Liam pressed. "Would you forgive her? After everything?" Travis gazed out at the lake, its surface reflecting the city lights. "Forgiveness isn't relevant to my decisions anymore. I don't waste energy on resentment, but I don't forget lessons learned either." "So that's a no," Liam concluded. "That's a recognition that some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt," Travis clarified. "Your mother made consistent choices that revealed her character. I have no interest in reestablishing any connection. But your relationship with her is separate from mine." Liam nodded slowly. "I told her I wasn't ready. That may be someday, but not now." He paused. "Was that the right call?" "There's no universally right answer," Travis replied. "Only the one that honors your own boundaries and well-being." As the last guest departed, Travis found himself on the terrace with Tara, who had been observing the interactions with her characteristic perceptiveness. "You never really told us the whole story, did you?" she asked. "About how you managed to trap Buck and Mom so completely." Travis studied his daughter's intelligent face. "Would knowing the details change anything meaningful for you?" Tara considered this. "No," she admitted, "but I've always wondered if there was a moment when you could have chosen differently, when you could have forgiven them." "There are many such moments," Travis acknowledged. "But forgiveness isn't always the appropriate response to calculated betrayal. Some actions reveal essential character. Tara, your mother and Buck showed me exactly who they were. I simply ensured appropriate consequences." "And never looked back," Tara added. "No," Travis agreed. "Never looked back." As night settled completely over the lake, Travis surveyed the home he had designed, not merely its physical structure, but the life it contained. He had rebuilt everything Buck and Veronica had attempted to destroy, creating something stronger and more authentic than what had existed before. In architecture, as in life, the strongest structures were those built with integrity.